welcome to
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Mike's Daily Podcast is the name of this place.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
It's a place called Cafe anyway, and we hang out here sometimes. We go to Mike Matthews and he gives us some rhymes, like he rhymes words like budget, and then he goes along and he gets on a jet and he flies away and he comes back and he says, this is episode 2420.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
2420, 2420. There's a 420 in there for some of you who find that interesting.
Mike's
and for those of you
Daily
who do not,
Podcast.
that's a fine. I'm gonna
Yeah!
tell you now, I get high on life. I know that's cliche, but I feel like most things you listen to today are cliche, so I just thought I would add to it. Add to the mix. It's Mike Matthews, and I'd like to say it was not a week where I could do a lot of the podcasting, because there was so much going on. Lots of people taking time off. I'm a manager, and when people take time off, I find that my job becomes a little more difficult, and I don't have as much free time. I gotta do other people's jobs, and over there was an arrowhead. You ever find yourself just quoting from Napoleon Dynamite with your friends, and you go, gosh, I quote from that movie a lot. Perhaps that movie was much bigger than we all thought. Maybe it is an American comedy classic. Who knows? Cafe, who knows? Cafe, anyway, is where we are today. And there's so much that I would like to get to today. I'm going to try not to be too long-winded. Although I have lots of friends in the radio world that are long-winded. They have lots of wind inside their bodies, and it takes them forever to get it all out.
Here's today's podcast picture.
But that's fine. Oh, time to update some of these. Wait, what is this? Device care. Should I update that? Okay, whatever. And we'll update this. Let's look at some podcast pic. Let's put a podcast picture. And who is this? Don't know who that is. Don't you love it when people try calling you? They're spam. Oh, the late great Basil the Boxer hated spam. I mean the callers that are spam. Call spam. Terrible. Oh, yesterday I went on a lovely walk with my lovely lady friend. I will post a podcast picture with her. Having fun. And you can see it at mikesdailypodcast.com on our lovely walk that we went to just above, where do they call this? It's above Columbia in Podcastro Valley. Oh, there's a big housing area that's on top of this hill in Podcastro Valley called Columbia. I don't know why. I don't know the history of this place. But it's a nice area, and way up on top there is a a trail that is part of the East Bay Regional Park District. And here it says that, Columbia Drive. At the very top, there's the Chabot to Garin Regional Trail. And if you're in the Bay Area, the East Bay, which I love the East Bay oh so much, because of all the culture, you never know who you'll meet. So many different people, so many different types of food, so many different just energies, people with the energy that they emit in their activities, in their motions through life, and in their emotions. And where am I going with it's the Juan Bautista de Anza Trail that we were on. And we actually were walking in this one area that you supposedly need a permit from the East Bay Municipal Water District people, utility district, EBMUD. But we walked along there and it was very beautiful. And I had a day off because it was Good Friday. Thanks to my company for letting me have Good Friday off. Although I did find myself working quite a bit. There was a lot to take over, to check. As a manager, you can micromanage, and that's not good. And every manager has to fight that. Or you can be so lax that everything goes crazy, and the cats take over. And they're jumping in and out of it. No, it's not it's not even cats, it's raccoons take over. And they're infiltrating your kitchen and taking and throwing everything around, and everything's out of control. But you can't think like that either as a manager, because that shows you have no faith in your crew. And that's wrong too. So there you go. Those are the extremes of managing. And the whole thing that I've talked about before, where you don't have your weekends. That's really annoying. But so far, so good this weekend. Knock on here. I think this is for Micah. Well, it's for me, and I am Micah, here at Cafe Anyway, somewhere in Podcastro Valley, the last place on earth, located somewhere in Podcastro Valleyton. Knock on Samsung. That's what I'll do. Okay, because I don't really know what these tables are made of. Here at Cafe Anyway. Isn't it odd that the airport in Los Angeles, probably busier than the SFO, the San Francisco airport, the Los Angeles airport, international airport, probably one of the busiest in the world, and it is called, its initials are LAX. It's lax. That's not a good moniker to have when you're trying to keep an eye on terrorists. And I know this joke is nowhere near pertinent in this world where we are so far after 2001 and 9/11, but we did have that very horrible situation happen in New York earlier this week with the shooter on the public transit system. So, all that is in my mind today here at Cafe Anyway, with all these wonderful people hanging out, enjoying Cafe Anyway, and Mike, who's talking about snoring. If there is one thing that every single heterosexual relationship, married, sharing their marriage bed, they are dealing with snoring. Men tend to snore. Also, I found out, as we go outside of Cafe Anyway, where we bring you Mike's Daily Podcast, somewhere in Podcastro Valleyton, that cats snore. I knew dogs snore. The late great Basil the Boxer used to snore. It put me to sleep. It was so calming, so soothing. I loved it. And the rhythmic, the repetition, it just put me right to sleep. I loved it. Cats snore, kind of a kind of thing. But when men snore, women don't like it. They do not like it. It can cause a marriage to fall apart. Yes, people have been divorced over snoring, and that's not so unusual. So the cure to snoring basically comes down to, if you tell your doctor, I think I snore, the doctor's going to want to run tests, and it's going to take a long time. It's going to be a big physical examination. This according to mayoclinic.org. By the way, the last podcast, I was pulling information from a website called powerofvitality.com. That was all the stuff about budgeting, which was pertinent around tax day. But here at mayoclinic.org, your doctor may request an imaging test such as an X-ray, a computerized tomography scan, or magnetic resonance imaging, checking the structures of your airway for problems like a deviated septum. They're going to do a sleep study, and it's interesting. My full-time job has across the hallway a sleep study department. In fact, my doctor told me that I would need to stay at the sleep study, and I'm like, oh great, like I have enough problems trying to get to sleep thinking about work. Now I'm going to sleep right next to work. You got to make So, depending on the severity of your snoring and other symptoms, your doctor may want to conduct a sleep study. Sleep studies may sometimes be done at home. However, depending upon your other medical problems and other sleep symptoms, you may need to stay overnight at a sleep center to undergo an in-depth analysis of your breathing during sleep by a study called polysomnography. In a polysomnography, you are connected to many sensors and observed overnight. During the sleep study, they record brain waves, blood oxygen level, heart rate, breathing rate, sleep stages, eye and leg movement. It would make sense, being the proximity of my job to the sleep study area, to take advantage of it. Sometimes in life, things line up. And you're like, well, I got free movie tickets and I live right next to a movie theater. I might as well go see a movie. This is sort of the situation. However, how do they treat snoring? To treat your snoring, your doctor likely will first recommend lifestyle changes. So we already know this is going to be the outcome if we want to avoid sleep studying. But here apparently is what they often prescribe. Losing weight. Doctors like to tell you to lose weight, don't they? Losing weight. Avoid alcohol close to bedtime. I, as a rule, try not to drink alcohol at home anymore. I have kept that pretty well. I did not like the fact that alcohol, when it turns to sugar, I think this is what happens. It wakes you up in the middle of the night. At any rate, alcohol does turn to sugar and add weight to you, make you heavier. It creates fat. It's not a very healthy choice to have alcohol, period. Then have it at night, but it adds to the possibility of you snoring. Also, they may say they have to treat your nasal congestion. You suffer from nasal congestion. Also, they may say that you have to do lifestyle changes like avoiding sleep deprivation. You need to sleep more and avoid sleeping on your back. That seems to be a culprit. Sleeping on your back. CPAP is the continuous positive airway pressure. Continuous positive airway pressure is CPAP. Lots of people have that. Those oral appliances as well. Form-fitting dental mouthpieces that help advance the position of your jaw, tongue, and soft palate to keep your air passage open. That way you gotta work with a dental specialist. CPAP eliminates snoring, is often used to treating snoring when associated with ASA. I'm going to continue on as well. Oh, upper airway surgery too, they may say. Oh, and there's a procedure that's, I'm going to have fun trying to pronounce this now. Are you ready? Here we go. Uvulopalatopharinoplasty. You're welcome. Here's some home remedies. If you're overweight, lose weight. People who are overweight may have extra issues in the throat that contribute to snoring. Sleep on your side. Lying on your back allows your tongue to fall backward into your throat, narrowing your airway and partially obstructing airflow. Try sleeping on your side. If you find that you always end up on your back in the middle of the night, try sewing a tennis ball in the back of your pajama top. Raise the head of your bed. Raising the head of your bed by about 4 inches may help. Raising the head of your bed by 4 inches. I never heard of that before. Nasal strips or external nasal dilator. Adhesive strips applied to the bridge of the nose help many people increase the area of their nasal passage, enhancing their breathing. A nasal dilator is a stiffened adhesive strip applied externally across the nostrils that may help decrease airflow resistance so you breathe easier. You can treat nasal congestion or obstruction. Having allergies or deviated septum can limit airflow through your nose. This forces you to breathe through your mouth, increasing likelihood of snoring. You can ask your doctor about a prescription steroid spray if you have chronic congestion to correct the structural defect in your airway, such as a deviated septum. You may need surgery. Limit or avoid alcohol and sedatives before sleeping. Sedatives and alcohol depress your central nervous system, causing excessive relaxation of muscles, including the tissues in your throat. Quit smoking. That's another thing that can cause snoring. So quit smoking, another reason to quit smoking. And get enough sleep. Adults should aim for at least 7 hours of sleep per night. The recommended hours of sleep for children vary by age. And that is all from the MayoClinic.org.
This is interesting.
Wow, this is interesting.
OSA is obstructive sleep apnea. It occurs when snoring is restricting the airway enough to cause a clinically relevant drop in blood oxygenation. The estimated prevalence of snoring is 40% compared to 17% of prevalence of OSA. Okay, and there you go. Thank you so much, Mayo Clinic. Did you hear that the Capitol Grill is getting blasted for allegedly turning away ex-mayor over leggings? That would be the former Atlanta mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms. She said there was an incident at the Perimeter Mall yesterday afternoon. She writes in a tweet, odd that a restaurant in a mall parking lot turns away a customer in mall attire. Asked if I could sit in the bar area, was told no. Rules are the rules. Just wonder if the woman who came in immediately after me, who I did not see come back out, was also denied service. Leggings. Okay. And then this little is news. All the clickbait out there is ridiculous. What did my lovely lady friend clicked on? She was looking at, there's somebody who gets paid $10,000 to come up with names for your baby. And my lovely lady friend just unloaded. Like, how is that possible in a world where she, my lovely lady friend, is a therapist and she gets paid what she gets paid? It ain't no $10,000 per naming like that lady coming up with names. It was a people.com thing, but we didn't end up clicking on it. And finally this, a judge has refunded to Alex Jones, the InfoWars host, $75,000 after he showed up for court. He was fined for failing to show up to court last month in an ongoing lawsuit over his false claims that the 2012 Sandy Hook shooting never occurred. Since he showed up, though, he got it back. The case centers on the 2012 tragedy in which a shooter opened fire at Sandy Hook, a school in Newton, Connecticut, killing 20 children and 6 adults. Families of 8 of the shooting victims and an FBI agent who responded to the scene sued Alex Jones for falsely saying the shooting was a hoax, invented as a way to advance restrictions on firearms. The right-wing media personality conspiracy theorist, yes, definitely a conspiracy theorist, and he is followed by people that if you talk to them for a little more than 2 minutes, you hear some wacko conspiracy theory of some kind flying out of their mouth, and you're like, wait, what? That's the people that love Alex Jones. He faces a jury trial in August that will determine how much he will have to pay the family in damages. That according to yahoo.com. Be careful of conspiracy theories, everyone. Really just watch that. It will lead you down a very dark hole. So will going down the YouTube hole. There's the YouTube rabbit hole of just one YouTube video after another. Oh, what's this? What's this? What's this? And then the, I don't know what it is that my lovely lady friend uses, some kind of, like, is it the Google news feed? Everybody has a news feed these days. Just be careful of clicking on all these crazy stories that take you nowhere. Try to read healthy stuff that will help you, stuff that will help the world, stuff that will help your neighbor. Let's think that way, in a positive light. Hey, look who's outside a cafe anyway with me right now. Hello, Matthews. It's Chely Shoehart, the chef supervisor. Wow, that was really interesting about snoring, Mike Matthews. You know, I'm glad you found it interesting. We learned some terms. I'm really getting sick of all of the abbreviations people use. Just say the whole word. We are always going to be coming up with abbreviations as a society, as culture, as that goes. We will try to abbreviate everything, and it just gets... The older you get, the more you find that just ridiculous. Because the abbreviations you knew, they get changed as soon as the younger generation comes in. We're not going to use that anymore. We're going to use something else. And so you try to be hip, come up with those abbreviations, those new ones, and in about 10 years, that's going to be over with. Just thinking about that at the moment. But LAX, for example. I try to be a little more lax with my abbreviations. I would just say that. And look who else is here. Hello, Mike. This is Floyd the Floorman. And this is John Deere, the engineer. Mike, I hope as a manager that you have an enjoyable weekend and enjoy the Easter weekend and have fun. I will if people just leave me alone. That's all I want. Next show, it'll be the wonderful Benita, the Disgruntled Fiddle Player, and the Brewmaster. You can tell me what you think, even though you don't exist, because I don't have any listeners. No one listens to this podcast. Bots listen to this podcast. Bots are my friends. Do you know why I know nobody listens to this podcast? Oh, I get plays. On my platforms. They'll tell me, 20 people listened. YouTube, 2 people listened. Other ones, there 3 downloads. But what really tells me that nobody listens is that nobody ever calls 336mm daily. 3 + 3 = 6. MM as in Mike Matthews. Daily as in what this podcast has been for a couple of days. Nobody has an opinion about anything I say because nobody's listening. So thank you for not listening, person listening that's not listening. And other ways to reach me, why, here's A-Frame to tell them to you.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com. Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye!